Step into the shadows. I am the silent specter, and you've just crossed into a world of nightmares. Tread carefully, for once you listen, the terror follows. Don't forget to subscribe, or risk being lost forever in the dark. In the city that never sleeps, the lights of Manhattan gleamed with an eerie brightness, flickering in the distance like the eyes of 1,000 lost souls. The towering skyscrapers loomed like silent giants, casting their long shadows over the streets below. This was New York, a city of dreams, yes, but also a city of nightmares. It wasn't until the darkness fully enveloped the skyline that the real terror of this place revealed itself. "Meet me at the Empire State Building," Emily had texted. The message came in late, the words simple but unsettling. She knew I would come. How could I refuse her? We'd been close for years, our friendship weathering the worst of time, distance, and heartbreak. But tonight, as I stood at the base of that massive tower, there was something wrong in the air. A heaviness, a sense of doom that I couldn't shake. The city had changed. It was the same, but something felt off. The streets were crowded, yet no one seemed to notice. The hum of life seemed too mechanical, too calculated, like everyone had been programmed to move a certain way. As I passed the towering billboards flashing garish ads for the newest gadgets and trends, I realized that not a single person was looking up. Their eyes were downcast, eyes glued to their phones, their movements stiff. I glanced up at the Empire State Building once more. Its silhouette was dark, shrouded in fog, with lights barely visible in the haze. Was Emily already up there? Had she waited for me? Or was something else pulling me to that impossible height? I started my ascent, the slow ride up the elevator feeling longer than it should have. The elevator creaked, and for a split second, I thought I saw something in the reflection. A shadow moving behind me. But when I turned, nothing was there. I shook it off, my breath short as the elevator rattled and finally came to a halt. The doors slid open, and I stepped into the observation deck, where a thin layer of fog enveloped the area. I looked around, calling Emily's name, but the fog swallowed my voice, leaving only silence in its wake. Where was she? I checked my phone, seeing her last text again. "Meet me at the Empire State Building." That's all it said. There was no further instruction, no indication of where she might be. A strange chill crept down my spine. The cold in the air wasn't natural. It felt like it was seeping from the steel beams themselves, coming from a place far darker than the skyline allowed. I walked to the edge of the observation platform, peering down at the city below. The streets were a maze of lights, like a web of tiny fireflies lost in the void. But as I stared, I noticed something wrong. The lights below weren't dancing. They were still, motionless, almost as if the city itself had frozen in time. My breath caught in my throat as the fog thickened, and the air seemed to hum with an unnatural force. Then, out of the mist, I saw her, Emily. She stood by the railing, facing away from me, her silhouette barely visible against the dark horizon. Her hair was tousled by the wind, but her movements were stiff, robotic. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. I stepped closer, feeling a deep unease settle in my chest. There was something wrong about the way she stood, as if she wasn't really there at all. "Emily?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Emily, are you okay?" She turned slowly, her face pale, her eyes vacant. They looked wrong, empty. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice a low rasp, as if it didn't quite belong to her. Something was terribly off. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but before I could form a coherent thought, the fog began to swirl violently around us. The lights from the city seemed to dim, their glow weakening until they flickered and finally died, leaving us in complete darkness. I reached for my phone, but it was dead. The screen was black, unresponsive. My heart pounded in my chest as I heard Emily's breathing, slow and uneven, like she was gasping for air. "What's happening?" I demanded, my voice barely louder than a whisper. Emily reached out, her fingers cold and trembling as they brushed against my cheek. I felt a shock of ice spread through me as her touch lingered. "We're not alone," she whispered, the words barely audible over the howl of the wind. I stepped back, my stomach twisting with dread. "What do you mean?" Her mouth twitched into a smile, but it wasn't a smile at all. It was a twisted, inhuman grin, her lips stretching impossibly wide, far too wide for a human face. Her eyes flashed, the empty sockets filling with a dark, pulsating glow. Suddenly, the fog parted, revealing the true horror of the Empire State Building's summit. There, hovering in the air like a grotesque manifestation of the city's nightmares, was a massive shadow. It stretched across the platform, its form flickering in and out of view, like a flickering television signal. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the void. Emily's figure began to fade, her body dissolving into the mist, her laugh echoing in my mind. "It's too late," she whispered one last time, before vanishing completely. And then the city below me shifted. The skyscrapers began to twist and bend, their shapes warping, becoming grotesque and unnatural. The lights that had once gleamed so brightly blinked out, leaving only darkness. A low, vibrating hum filled the air, and the sound of distant whispers seemed to echo from every corner of the city. I stumbled back, my heart racing as the shadowed form above grew larger, closer. I could hear it now. The scratching, the scraping sound of something terrible dragging itself across the ground. And then it spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was low, guttural, reverberating in my bones. It was the voice of the city itself. The shadowed figure hovered just above me now, its glowing eyes piercing through the fog like twin orbs of fire. The last thing I saw before everything went black was its smile. The fog swallowed me whole, and the world went silent. And New York continued, its towers looming above, their lights flickering in the distance. But now they seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as though the city had claimed something, someone that would never leave.